What if a king could die and the kingdom would not find out for 30 years? What if his laws kept being written after his heart stopped? What if his taxes kept being collected, his armies kept marching, his enemies kept surrendering to a man who was already dust? For most of history, this was not a mystery. It was a strategy. You think of a throne as a chair, a place a living person sits, but a throne was never really the wood, or the gold, or the body pressed into it. A throne is an agreement. It is millions of people quietly deciding, all at once, that one name is allowed to command them. And here is the strange part. A name does not have a heartbeat. A name cannot get sick. A name does not die when the body does. So what happens when the body dies first? In more than one kingdom, the answer was simple. You do not tell anyone. You keep the king ruling. It sounds absurd. But put yourself inside the walls of an ancient palace. The ruler has just died in a distant province far from the capital, surrounded by only a handful of advisors. Those advisors know something terrible. The moment word gets out, everything breaks. Rivals will move. Borders will be tested. Sons will draw knives on brothers. A dead king is not just a dead man. He is a door thrown open, and every ambitious person in the realm is standing outside it. So the advisors make a choice. They keep the door shut. There is a famous journey in the ancient world where a powerful emperor died on the road, hundreds of miles from home. His closest officials did not announce it. They loaded his body back into his covered carriage as if he was simply resting. Meals were still brought to the carriage. Reports were still delivered to it. Officials still bowed and asked for decisions, and the advisors, hidden inside, answered in his name. There was only one problem. A body does not wait politely for you to reach the capital. It begins to change. It begins to smell. So they filled the carts around the carriage with rotting fish. Think about that. An entire procession of salted, spoiling fish wheeled across the countryside for one reason only, so that no one would notice the true source of the smell drifting from the emperor's carriage. The stench of decay was hidden inside a stench everyone could explain, and it worked. By the time the truth was allowed to surface, the succession was already arranged, the rivals already handled, the transition already sealed. The living had used the dead to buy themselves time, but that is only weeks. That is a single journey. The real trick, the one that lasts 30 years, is stranger than a rotting carriage, because sometimes the kingdom does not want to know. Consider what a living king actually is. He is a disappointment waiting to happen. He ages. He makes bad decisions. He loses a war. He raises a tax. He grows cruel or weak or simply old. And every year he is alive, the shine wears off him a little more. A living king can be argued with. He can be doubted. He can be seen. A dead king cannot. Once a ruler is gone, something remarkable happens to him. He stops changing. He becomes fixed, perfect. Every mistake he might have made in the next 30 years, he now never makes, because he is not there to make them. The living king was a man. The dead king becomes an idea, and an idea is far harder to overthrow than a man. There were kingdoms where a ruler's death was quietly absorbed into the machinery of the state, and the machinery simply kept running. Edicts still went out under the old name. Officials still governed as they had been trained to govern. Coins were still struck. Judgments were still made. The dead king's authority did not vanish. It hardened. It became the thing everyone pointed to when they wanted to be obeyed. Not the man, the name. The name kept ruling, and people obeyed it, because obedience is a habit. You do not question the throne every morning when you wake up. You do not re-examine from scratch why one person's word is law and yours is not. You simply live inside the arrangement you were born into. Your parents obeyed it, their parents obeyed it. By the time you're old enough to ask whether it makes sense, the question feels almost rude. The dead king rules not because he is strong, but because you never think to check whether he is still there. This is the counterintuitive truth at the center of power. The absence of the king can be more powerful than the king. Here is a story told for centuries of a great warrior whose people needed him even after he had died. So they are said to have dressed his body in armor, strapped him upright onto his horse, and sent him out ahead of the army one last time. His enemies, seeing him ride, are said to have fled in terror. A dead man leading a charge. Whether it happened exactly that way or not, the reason the story survives is that everyone who hears it understands the logic instantly. The enemy was not afraid of a corpse. They were afraid of what the corpse represented, and that fear did not need him to be breathing. Even in societies that eventually built careful laws around royal death, the idea refused to disappear. There is an old principle spoken at the exact moment a monarch dies that captures it perfectly. The instant one ruler stops breathing, the crowd does not fall silent in grief. They shout, The king is dead. Long live the king. In a single breath, they bury one body and hand its authority to the next. There is no gap. There is no empty throne. The person died, but the office did not. The office is deathless by design, and that is the secret the ancient advisors understood before anyone wrote it into law. The person was never the point. The person was just the temporary container. What ruled was the belief, and belief does not need a pulse. So a dead king could rule for 30 years, not because his heart kept beating, but because the belief in him did. Now here is the part that should make you sit very still. You think this is history, something that happened long ago, in palaces made of stone, to people who did not know better. You think you live in a world of the living, governed by people you can see and vote for and shout at. But look closer at your own life. The rules you follow today were written, in large part, by people who are dead. The laws that decide what you can own, who you can marry, how you must drive, what happens to you if you steal, were shaped by hands that stopped moving long before you were born. You have never met them, you cannot argue with them, and yet every single day you obey them without noticing. Their words still command you, their names are still binding. The company you work for may be run in the spirit of a founder who died decades ago, whose sayings are still quoted in meetings, whose photograph still hangs in the lobby, whose vision still decides what gets built. The country you live in may be held together by a document written by people who have been gone for generations, and yet that document can send you to war, or set you free, or take your money, or protect your voice. You are, right now, being ruled by the dead, and it has been going on for far longer than 30 years. We never really stopped keeping the king in his carriage, we just got better at it, because power was never about the body. It was never about who was breathing in the palace. It was about the story a whole society agrees to keep telling, generation after generation, until the story itself becomes the ruler. The body is temporary. The belief is what governs, and belief, unlike a heart, does not have to stop. So the ancient advisors were not fools hiding a corpse in a wagon. They understood something we still lean on today. They understood that the moment enough people agree that a name has power, that power stops needing the person entirely. Which brings you back to the question you started with. What if a king could die and the kingdom would not find out for 30 years? You imagined a trick. A rotting body wheeled through the countryside, a smell hidden inside a smell, a clever lie stretched thin across decades. But that was never the real answer. The real answer is quieter and far stranger. A dead king can rule for 30 years, or 300, for the simplest reason of all. Because the kingdom was never the land, and it was never the crown, and it was never the body on the throne. The kingdom was always just what everyone agreed to believe, and you are standing inside one of those agreements right now. Thank you for watching.